Hey everybody, it's RJ, your host, and welcome to HashItOut. As parts of the US are beginning to reopen after initial coronavirus pandemic shutdowns, so too is the cannabis event industry. In this episode, I'll be speaking with Adelia Carrillo of EventHi about the trends they're seeing in cannabis events in the age of COVID-19. We'll also talk about how hybrid events are becoming the forefront of meeting design, the added pressure of focusing on safety in an industry that is constantly scrutinized and evolving, and more. Without further ado, let's hash it out. My guest today is the Chief Marketing Officer of the cannabis event platform EventHi. Welcome to the show, Adelia Carrillo. Hello.
Hi. How are you?
It's so great. Oh, I'm doing well. How are you? It's so great to have you back, not only on the show, but back to see you face to face. You were back on the show in our early days when we were audio only. So thank you so much for coming back and having a face-to-face conversation.
Right? No, I'm excited.
It.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invite and excited to see what we talk about today.
Totally. Well, yeah, we certainly have a lot to talk about. Again, you are the Chief Marketing Officer of EventHi, and over the past year, the coronavirus pandemic has certainly debilitated the event industry, but I am excited to have you here today to talk about what the event industry looks like this year and moving forward with, the cautious reopenings, these hybrid events, and what the future has in store for the cannabis industry in terms of the event space. I understand that EventHi has been keeping track as announcements and guidelines are quickly changing regarding coronavirus restrictions and reopenings. Mm-hmm. So for you, what are some of the trends that you are seeing in the cannabis event industry this year that differ from last year?
Well, things are happening again. Obviously, last year everyone took a big hit, especially the event and tourism sector. But what we are starting to see now this year is, it's interesting looking at it from a state by state kind of map, and we literally have a map here, and we have like notes and everything on there to keep track of it. But you'll see some of these states don't have any restrictions. Some of them are just like, do what you want, hundreds of people, it's all good. We're starting to see other states, California has been a lot more conservative in that route, and so has Nevada for a while. And so we're starting to see them open, but they're implementing a lot of safety security measures. So it does have capacity requirements, depending on whether you're indoor or outdoor. Obviously, they still want social distancing incorporated. And with the trends, what we're seeing is, everybody went to virtual last year. Now we're still seeing a new group of event organizers that are now not ready to be in person. So now they're more interested in trying out this virtual component. They didn't do it last year, but now they're starting to do it this year, which is exciting to see. And it's almost good placement for them because now attendees are willing to pay virtual events. It was really hard last year for event organizers to generate revenue, unfortunately.
Right.
But now there are ticket sales happening for these virtual events. Then you'll start to see these hybrid components where these event organizers are seeing the opportunity to, in a sense, reach more people. You have your in-person tickets and you'll have more of an intimate gathering of people. Then you have those that can watch from anywhere, which gives brands more recognition, which gives speakers more recognition, and just makes it better for sponsors and sponsorship opportunity for these events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, when it comes to cannabis events, there are, of course, B2B and then B2C events.
Correct.
For those who may not be familiar out there, can you just explain briefly what the difference is between those two types of events, and how are you seeing those different types of events responding to the reopenings? Are they responding differently? Are some happening and some aren't?
Yeah, they definitely are responding differently. But so B2B is your traditional, conferences, expos, workshops, networking events for the businesses to come and connect and collaborate. Now, the B2C, you can find such a diverse variation of B2C events, and it's exciting. It's cool to see that pre-COVID, and hopefully in the future again. But you'll see like sushi and doobie. You roll a sushi and you learn how to roll a joint. There's little
Oh,
festivals. There's cannabis and yoga. There's infused dinners. Really, anything that can be an activity can just be enhanced with cannabis. So you just find your tribe of people that like to do that, and there you go. And so it's really exciting in that realm. Now, the difference that we're seeing is these B2C events are, I don't, they're not, they're being very small and very careful right now. They are, whether if they are going the route of having in-person events, we're starting to see them be a lot more strategic in how they're planning these events out. Majority of them are outside, or if they're indoors, there's a lot more space that they're utilizing.
mhm.
And they're not happening as often as they would. I knew, a lot of smaller events were almost monthly or a couple times a week before COVID happened. Obviously COVID happened, and now we're here, and they're being very careful on what they do. Um,
Mhm.
the same thing for B2B events, but we're seeing conferences. We are seeing these big events starting to happen on the B2B realm, which is interesting.
Mhm.
We've actually spoken with quite a few. There's an event coming up in Vegas called G4, and they've informed us that the casino actually is working really closely with them. So they are actually able to make sure that they are providing a safe space. So the casino's providing hand washing stations. There's going to be more security. There's going to be different timing of check-in, little ways to help make sure that people aren't clustered in areas. Um,
Sure.
and so that, I think, is great, is knowing that these venues are willing to work with cannabis event organizers and making sure to provide a safe space for these bigger events.
Certainly. And, um, organizing cannabis events in and of itself already has its unique challenges because
Yes.
of how different states approach cannabis. Even if they have their own forms of legalization, every form of legalization,
Yeah.
differs by state. And now, during the coronavirus pandemic, every state has their own coronavirus pandemic
Yes.
regulations and safety protocols. Um, for example, the mayor of Washington, D.C. sort of came under criticism for not allowing dancing at
Yeah.
weddings if they're indoors. Like, you can have a wedding, but you can't dance because the dancing, might increase your chances of being close to one another, whatever that may be. And I think it was just yesterday, as we're recording this, the CDC started exploring the possibility of loosening indoor mask
Mhm.
mandates as the vaccination rate is rising. So, what's it been like, and what have you seen in the cannabis event industry space in terms of keeping track? Like, how difficult is it for you to keep track of all of these, ongoing updates that change day to day, week to week?
It's honestly almost a full-time job, like it really is. And that's the thing. That's
Sure.
why we're trying to at least educate the event organizer community to do the work for them, because it is, like you said, it's not even a full state. Some of these states have it by county. So even depending on the county you're in can be different
Mm.
than, like, let's say San Diego and LA, which is just
Hmm.
so hard to understand, because you're right, you have cannabis regulations you have to follow. Now you have to have these COVID regulations that you have to follow, and they honestly are changing weekly. It really is becoming to that level where one week they're this way, and then next week everything has changed completely different.
Mm.
And I guess, though, it's really more of like capacity. They're really just looking at, increasing capacity or certain specifications. Like you said, the dancing. Some states don't allow karaoke or singing because of that same
Right.
thing.
Right.
So it does vary. But yeah, that's our goal over here. It has really been to educate. And that's one of the components that we had to do, not to survive, but to kind of provide value while things were all upside down for the event industry. It was really about education. And, we're continuing to do that, so that we can lead by example. The last thing we need as an
Mm.
event, as a cannabis event industry, is for them to have a reason to point anything bad against us.
Right.
So we want event organizers to do it as as carefully as they can.
That's a great point that you raised because, a lot of people out there are always trying to look for a place to like poke a hole in the cannabis industry, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? And to delegitimize it almost.
exactly.
And I feel like one of the avenues that they could take for that is safety, because safety is always an issue of discussion when it comes to anything cannabis, particularly cannabis events, particularly B2C cannabis
Yes.
events. And, safety, of course, now is a focus more than ever. So tell me a little bit more about the certain strategies that you're seeing when it comes to these safety protocols and requirements, and how ready to, I guess, how ready to adapt and almost improvise do you need to be in this day and age for cannabis events in the age of coronavirus?
You have to be ready to pivot. You have to have a backup plan for everything. But what we're seeing is kind of right from the beginning. So an event organizer plans that they're going to, starts announcing they're going to host an event. What we're
Hmm.
seeing is that they're adding more education and insight right away in their marketing before the event, before they're even at the event. This is what we're doing to basically protect you, or these are our safety measurements. Or two, they're also now having those disclaimers, which we've seen the past year at restaurants, at a variety of places where if you've had corona, if you know someone, if you've traveled, don't come. Basically, don't come to these
Mm.
events. Then once they get to the event, we're starting to see more event organizers incorporate like a some sort of agreement, like a contract, just like it's kind of those ones that you do when if you jump out of a plane, you have to sign it and just make sure you're not going to make them liable for it. um,
Sure.
and we've spoken with lawyers. It may not help you in court at the end of the day, but it's still something that's extra protection if you have a guest sign that, because they're now admitting that they know they're attending this event if something were to happen, into that realm.
Hmm.
Then let's
Hmm.
say now you're in the event. Hand sanitizers are an obvious. Depending on the state, depending on the venue, if it's indoor or outdoor, majority are still requiring masks. Some are not.
Hmm.
Again, just if they have the distancing available, they're incorporating that. Then we're looking at the vendors. Some of the vendors are incorporating acrylics at the front of their booths instead of just the normal regular booths that you would see traditionally. And then even when it comes to like food and serving, food are now no not like buffet style or grab it as you go. It's definitely either more prepackaged or separated for guests to individually be handed them now instead of them grabbing
Mm.
it. So it really is a whole experience that has changed. Again, depending on the venue, they might even have to guide their audience through the experience, so you might have to follow arrows on where to go.
Yeah.
It's all these little things. It just depends on what you are trying to create and how you want your guests to feel, because it really goes back to them. How are they going to feel comfortable? How are they going to go back home, and are they going to feel good about being at your event? Are they going to feel like you didn't care about them with this current landscape? Because yes, they're attending the event and that's all on them, but as event organizers, there still should be some requirements that have to be implemented for their safety.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. The following the arrows just took me back to like April 2020 at Target. I was like,
Yeah.
like that height. You remember that? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, that
It really
crazy
is.
time. Yeah. Now, 97%. Oh, maybe this is where I was getting headset from earlier. 97% of event professionals believe that we will see more hybrid events this year, which I mean, I think that's a pretty safe bet that they're making.
Yeah.
According to the Amex 2021 Global Meetings and Events forecast, hybrid events are, quote, now by necessity at the forefront of meeting design. So, as certain parts of the country do begin reopening, what are some of the trends you're seeing in terms of hybrid events? And for you, are there any sort of exciting innovations that you're seeing in bridging those dimensions, I guess?
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with that kind of that data point where we're definitely seeing an increase in the interest of hybrid events. Event organizers are realizing the importance of it, and what they're asking, the questions that they are asking is, what can they do to make it feel similar for the attendee who is coming virtually. So let's say they have, panels, which is easy to do virtually. Okay, we got that covered. Now let's say the rest of the maybe 3 o'clock, there's a networking hour. Now they want to know how can they incorporate that for the guests who are virtual. So they're looking at platforms that can really provide unique features that could still create engagement for their attendees who are coming in virtually, which is great. They're keeping both of those things in mind. Or they could be very generic in the hybrid component, and maybe they just focus on the panels. But we're seeing that event organizers are catering to both a lot more. They want the engagement on both sides. And they're realizing that they're going to have to, increase their staff, or at least work with a production kind of team to handle that, because that wasn't something they necessarily needed to do before COVID. Hybrid events did happen, but now they're definitely more a necessity. Will that be
Certainly.
will that be the long term forever? Honestly, I don't know. I get from the data.
I was going to ask
Yeah,
you.
from the data that we've
Yeah.
seen, it goes back and forth. A lot of people are like, no, once we can, we're going to be all out. We don't need virtual. But there's still so many people that even when things are, some people would just prefer. Some people have seen what it's like to not travel, to spend the certain money that they used to, and to see the opportunities still available for them. So that's something that we should still keep in mind, that it might still be necessary for hybrid for a while.
Certainly. There are obviously benefits and drawbacks to a virtual event and an in-person event. They all have their pros and cons. But it does seem like it could be a great opportunity to continue to increase accessibility to these events. Don't you think, to allow someone perhaps in another country or another state or another time zone to be able to virtually attend these events that they may be interested in, but otherwise wouldn't be able to attend?
Yeah, I agree. At the end of the day, education is key for this industry. Whatever your role is, whatever you do, we all should be educating at some level for this plant. And that goes with events, obviously. Events do educate about this plant no matter what the experience is. But if we can further that reach by going virtual or the hybrid component, we should, definitely.
Now, the past year, was certainly a stress test, I would say, for the event industry. But what was a bright spot that you had last year? Was there a certain event that you attended that you think was really innovative in terms of the virtual vibe? What were some bright spots for you over the past year? I'm dying to hear some good news, Adelia.
Well, the good news I'll say, like right now, is that for us, EventHi survived. That was our biggest thing for us. It was like, yes, we survived. Obviously things are not done, but we've made it through a really hard time for our company. We saw almost 90% of our business within weeks. So it was tough. But the good things that I would say came out of it was honestly being able to kind of reconnect with a lot of the event organizers closely. A lot of them reached out, and we were doing a lot of virtual events for event organizers so that we could educate them, so that they could network. And then also just seeing the creativity that a lot of these event organizers did. That it wasn't all just panels and conferences. There really were unique moments where some people would incorporate like a full day of just like say meditation, sound healing, depending on the event it was, whether it was more of a healing and wellness event. Last year, EventHi hosted our own event. We don't normally really host events. We're more the software side, obviously, but we wanted to do something to give back. And we brought event organizers from around the world to each host a 1-hour event in our big event. It was a 24-hour event. Literally, we were up 24 hours and had event organizers from around the world. And it was called HiO.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so we did that, and it was great. And we were able to raise some funds for a local nonprofit that we partnered with, and that was honestly fun for us. It was just good to kind of bring some light into that heavy period back then.
Certainly. And last question then is, you made it through a tough year. You survived. EventHi survived. That's the best news we could possibly hear. And what are you looking forward to, and what is EventHi looking forward to for the rest of this year and beyond?
Well, now we're excited again because we're starting to, start to see states hop back on to host these different events. So that's just an exciting, opportunity to see that happen. Personally, for the company, we are looking to expand. We're going to be opening up our seed round and get EventHi from basically public beta to V1. We've been working hard waiting for that to happen, and so our goal is to just raise our seed round and move forward because we're ready. We know events are going to increase dramatically as the years go on. There's been some data points stating that the forecast prior to COVID, the numbers that they expected the event industry to reach, now after they've actually increased almost by like a third or something. So I think it's because people have seen the importance of connection and that missing out and just that need for being together, that events are going to come back stronger in a few more years, I would say. Not right away, but in a few years.
Sure. In due time.
Exactly.
Definitely. Yeah. That's so exciting. Well, Adelia, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you sitting down and hashing it out with me again.
Yes.
This is one of my first rehashes. And so I thank you so much for joining me today. Please keep up all of the great work at EventHi. I wish you all the best. I'm so glad to hear that you made it out of a tough year. And I'm so excited to see what y'all have in store for the rest of the year and beyond in the coming years.
Perfect. Well, I'm excited to be back, and it was great officially seeing you now instead of the verbal podcast.
Face to face, exactly.
But yeah, thank you so much. Always honored to be here and talk about events.
Absolutely. Adelia Carrillo, thank you so much for joining me again. I really appreciate your time. That is it for Hash It Out, y'all. Thank you so much for watching, commenting, liking, and subscribing. I am your host, RJ Balde, as always, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out. Hey everybody, thanks for checking out our channel. Click here to watch another episode of Hash It Out. To find more cannabis industry reporting, insider stories, and to stay up to date on the latest trends, make sure to subscribe and keep up with our Trichomes community app. Download it now for free, and we'll see you there.